We want to build a sink workstation and we want to put it right here. There's a lot of highly skilled people out there who can build similar projects with impressive results. There's the right way to do it, and then there's our way. After discussing the general plan for the build, it's time to draw it up. We've decided on the measurements, make it big enough. The sink's going to be on the left, there's going to be a cabinet on the right, and on the left there's room for hot water heater and plumbing. We know where we want the sink workstation to go, but we need to measure to make sure it's going to fit in this spot. Next, we measure and mark the underside of the top deck where it's going to align with the frame. Let's go outside and cut the pieces for the top of the frame, then bring them in and lay them out to our markings. Let's drill some mounting holes before we weld this thing together. A bit of cleaning on the ends of the pieces makes for much better welds. Now it's time to bring out the welding equipment so we can start putting this frame together. Sure, you could build the entire frame out of wood, but why not use metal to make it stronger? Since we didn't have a big enough welding table, we just used the bottom side of the countertop block. Left some burn marks, but it's underneath where no one can see it. Making sure the sink workstation sits level is very important. Here we're welding one of the height adjustment nuts directly into the leg itself. This weld just didn't sound right.
It does not like that bolt material, whatever that. Yeah, don't breathe in.
Yeah, that magnet that we were using to hold the nut in place was interfering with the weld. Notice how much cleaner that sounds. And it's not putting off toxic gases. It ended up being a lot easier to hold the nut in place with the bolt that goes into it. All of these support legs are done. Let's test out the adjustable feet. When attaching the legs to the top frame, we used magnetic levels to make sure everything was squared out before the welds went on. Reinforcing the frame with some gussets. After a coat of spray paint, we brought it in and test fit it to the workstation top. No better way to test its strength than to dance on it. Earlier in the video, you may have noticed this shot where there's already a hole cut out for the sink in the worktop. Reason being is because to put the middle legs on in the proper place, we needed to know where the sink was going to fit. So cutting it out and sliding it in was the best way to know. So we're going to back up and show you that part. We measured the sink outer dimensions and then made measurements on the top. You can see the pencil outline. That's where we're going to cut through, where the sink will drop in. Since the sink doesn't rest completely left of center point, we'll have to offset the center legs a little bit to the right. To cut out the hole for the sink, first you got to drill the corners out, then the jigsaw blade fits in there. Just hand cut lines since it's going to be under the edge of the sink. After all four sides are finally cut through, the middle piece pops out, and we now have the hole for the sink. Brush off a little sawdust, clean it up with the belt sander. Using an appropriate sized hole saw, we drill a spot for the faucet plumbing to drop through. The initial test fit of the sink in the hole showed that we need to remove a little more material because it was a bit too snug. Using the belt sander here was far less about aesthetics and more about removing material a little bit faster. There's a nice 2-inch flange around the top of the sink that will easily cover any imperfections in our cut. One more test fit, and fits like a glove. Now that we know the sink is a good fit in the hole we cut, it's time to sand and prep for a waterproof coating and stain.
So I couldn't find my paint opener bucket anywhere, so handy back scratcher.
This is a waterproofing stain to protect the wood around the sink from getting moisture damage. Here are the results after 3 coats, with a light sanding between each. Now that the wood is sealed and stained, we can bring the frame in from drying and get it mounted. With about a dozen pre-drilled holes in the top frame rail, it was really easy to secure the countertop with wood screws. We showed you the adjustable height feet in the first part of this video, but here they are again. Okay, now it's time to permanently mount the sink into the countertop. It's a tight fit, but we push it almost all the way down and then run a bead of silicone all around. So when we finally press the sink down, it'll have a nice seal. Now that it's sealed, water won't be able to creep between the sink and the countertop.
Yeah, so this is just kind of like a burp vent. So as water goes down, it pulls air with it, and then
But it never backs out.
it never backs out.
For some reason, gets a back pressure. It never comes.
Right.
up that.
This stops it from. It's like a breather, just so the drain can go out.
Yeah. Drain will flow better with a breather.
Right.
And then the actual drain is coming out through that instead of the service panel, so it'll be more accessible. With the sink pushed back into place, we can plan out the layout for the plumbing.
Plan, rough idea of where the water is going to go. So this is our water in, and then we have our cold section, and then we're going to run a faucet just so we can fill buckets and such. And then we have this line that's going to be capped for later use.
So that was the general idea for the plumbing layout that's going to be behind the wall and coming out from the wall. So let's lay out all the pieces and mock it up and start gluing things together. PVC cement has the primer and then the actual adhesive. I learned something new today. Using the trusty hole saw again, I'm going to drill a hole in the wall for the fill line to pass through. Lightly sand the PVC fitting surfaces before you cement them together. The plumbing that outputs to the sink is now installed. Let's run a fill line to where the faucet will be. The faucet is installed. Let's test it out. After the air purges out of the new pipes, we've got great water pressure.
Like foam chunks for release.
Let's test the fill line plumbing for the sink as well.
Ah!
We got some nice thick plywood that we're going to use to make floorboards for the cabinet and also a shelf on the right side.
Alright, so what we're going to do is we have that nice sink made. We're going to put doors in it. So what these are doors we got with the cabinets. And one of the cabinets was damaged, so they sent us replacement doors, told us we can keep these. So these are these are warped and crushed and whatever, but they're still.
But just this part.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of good doors.
So what we're gonna do is proceed to cut these in half. There's door closing mechanisms, and there's plastic on these and metal. So we have one metal ripping blade, and we're gonna try and
Yes,
rip
it's
right
got a
through it.
backing and a latch mechanism, and we're gonna just cut it and see. We've already measured for the height of the sink cabinet, marked a line, masked it. So we run the saw, we got a nice line to follow, and should get up the right height.
So we're gonna cut this one first because there's no internal guts to it, and we'll move that one out of the way.
Cutting the old door down to size went really well, actually. That saw cut through everything very cleanly. It looks rough, but that's just the masking tape. Since the cut on the bottom of the doors is so sharp, we put some adhesive car door trim over it so we don't accidentally slice our toes off when opening them. Here we're just setting them up against the sink so we can measure where the wood siding is going to go.
Look at that.
You even placed that exactly right.
Oh, well, I'm just a little off. Well, I mean, I'm a 32nd off or 16th off, something
Keep
like that.
in mind,
Quarter inch.
the board is gonna just go behind this.
It should be flush.
No, because the magnets are raised out, the door is
Oh.
raised out, so the board is gonna go behind it,
Oh, just a little bit.
and then the hinge will be here.
Yeah.
As you could probably tell from that conversation, we are not experienced carpenters. We'll come back to the hinge conversation later. For now, let's cut some boards and start working on the siding. The front boards are done, so we'll keep working around the sides. These are cut from leftover tongue and groove boards that were used to finish the shop ceiling. We're installing them with self-tapping screws that just go directly into the metal frame. With the siding now done, we can push it back in its place.
Oh, my back. My balls. I still want to drag this across the top of my toes.
Now we're going to hook up the sink plumbing to the wall and connect the drain. These fittings were pretty easy to figure out. One of us must have been a plumber in another life, if you know what I mean. The fill line is connected to the faucet. Now we're going to connect the drain to the sink.
Tight and tight, drain is on, connected. So now you reach in and turn on the water, and we're gonna see if there's a geyser.
Hey.
Right, we will check this in a minute, but right now it is time to go up here.
Oh. Well, maiden voyage. And there's water in the shop.
Water in the shop. Now, put it back on.
Draining.
Put it back on.
Let's make sure it's draining.
It fills and drains. Somebody installed these nice cabinet door hinges, the hot water heater, and the shelves off camera. What a great wash station for the shop.